We're in the Wong for the setup for Tomoyo's MFA performance. And where I'm sitting is the lighting control used by Hans, the lighting designer. The control board he's using is the Ion, and it is in fact acting slaved to a larger version of the same family of lighting control board or console, which Daryl Strohan is going to demonstrate a little bit about in the rest of this episode. The Ion is part of the EOS family of lighting consoles manufactured by ETC, and it essentially runs exactly the same software as the larger console, but it has fewer features available to you simultaneously. You have to do quite a bit of switching around to get the same features operating. The Ion is one of the smaller boards in the EOS family, and it's a little difficult to tell you about its capabilities because almost everything is in software, and the program for the control of this lighting board has been upgraded many, many times. And the nice thing about these boards now, and in particular the ETC family, is that the designers of the boards and the designers of the programs that run on the consoles have been very responsive to feedback from lighting designers and technicians, operators, and so on. And that's generally the case in this industry. Roughly speaking, we've got a keyboard which can be used to do a lot of labeling and even operation if you work that way. You've got a monitor, there can be two monitors running that tell you what you're doing, and then if you know anything about lighting boards, you might look at this and think, oh yeah, well this is the heart of the matter here. But of course, having asked that way, you know I'm going to say you would be wrong, because really that's an accessory. It's called a fader wing, and this is the actual operating console here. And what it can do in the very basic way, at least, will become more obvious when Daryl demonstrates and talks about really the basics of what lighting control is like these days. Just to be clear, nobody is expecting that you're going to be able to run one of these consoles from today's material, but at least you should get a general sense of how the approach is working and the kinds of capabilities in a very broad sense that a board like this has. But as a lighting designer, I could tell you that enormous changes have occurred in lighting control just in my career. I literally started touring in some theaters in the United States in my 20s, when those theaters were still equipped with huge racks of resistance dimmers, where two men were needed to operate the dimmers, which were themselves also the control boards. And if that interests you, you can look that up online under resistance dimmer boards. And then there was an evolution where the electronic equipment that did the work, the dimmers, were put elsewhere in the theater, and they were controlled remotely. But still, basically, things were manual. Things were literally controlled by pushing levers and so on. The next stage was that even though you did set things up by moving sliders and so on, you could suddenly record what you had done into computer memory and play it back with a few keystrokes. And that's enormous. That's enormous from the point of view of a designer, because what a lighting designer is doing is not creating still pictures on stage in live theater. They are actually working in time, they're working in rhythm, they're creating transitions that move the focus on stage, what the audience follows. They are working with the performer's moves or the audience's reaction or the spirit of the music that's being used, and it's a continuous evolution of images. And so one of the huge differences when memory boards first began to appear was that you could actually ask the operator with some reasonable expectations to go back one or two states in what you've done, and then run forward again in real time. Whereas if things were being done manually, you had what are called preset boards, where it would look a little bit like this board here, but in this case, if I was going to show you that, I would say that this upper one here of whatever it is, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, so 20 sliders here would be operating the exact same lights as 20 sliders here. And typically you would have a minimum of 3 of these sets, which are called scenes, because you would literally push the sliders up into positions that would give you one image here, do that here for another image, and do that for a third one. And then what you would do is crossfade from this one to this one. And why you had 3 was you needed to be always in one scene. That's the lighting that's operating. You would have one already preset to go to, and you would be making the third one ready for a cue after that. And then you would do as many adjustments as your fingers could accommodate on the sliders here before you switched over to the next preset. And so going backwards meant looking at the writing, and so stepping back and running a sequence again meant going back to a state where you could preset that scene, making a few manual adjustments to bring you up to where you had been before you did the transition you wanted to look at, and then running the transition or 2 transitions or whatever. And so, quite frankly, that was usually more trouble than it was worth, and you just didn't bother unless you had all the time in the world. The minute you could record a state and play it back, now it was really easy. You could step back to the state that you wanted to see and run the changes, and then you could make adjustments. On the other hand, if I tell people things like that, they often think that when they're seeing a show running on a board like this, that it's like clicking go on a video and it just runs. And that is rarely the case. Rarely the case, especially not in live theater or live dance or any kind of live performance, frankly, because it's all about the timing. And of course, there's probably a stage manager calling sequences, but even an operator is making changes to what's happening instinctively, and definitely the stage manager is picking up specific go points according to the performance that's happening right at that instant and making adjustments. So sometimes you're playing a sequence in continuously like a recording, but not anywhere near as often as you might think. All right, let's look in some close-ups of these components. Here's a close-up of the fader wing. It does look remarkably like a manual board, but in fact, as would be indicated by this LCD screen above it, you can load just about anything you want onto this because it's really not a manual board at all. And you have indications like the green lights correspond to the text above and tell you that something is loaded or operating or various other things. And this gives you a tremendous amount of control because you can load for manual operation anything from an individual light to a whole designed state and even various kinds of effects and bring them in and out and work with them that way. This is really the operating part of the board, and you have the part of the board where you design things, and it gives you innumerable functions that you can call up. You can identify what any given thing is by hitting one button. You've got a keypad. You've got various esoteric operating commands built in there. You have other parts of the board that do, instead of actually typing in a command, you just hit a button, and then you've got some encoder wheels that allow you to modify whatever is identified. So just for example, look here, if you can read it, this says pan on the left one, tilt, and position, speed, and so I can change those functions to do just about anything really, and then operate them on top of cues. I've got a little encoder wheel here. That's kind of like a trackpad on or scrolling your mouse. I've got a pretty standard computer keyboard so that I can put labels on things that I've done. And I've got, if you've ever run a lighting board, yes, I do have a manual fader, although it might not always be what you think it is because it might be a speed controller. But I do have a grandmaster and a blackout button and so on. So some of the things are quite similar to manual boards, at least superficially. And then on either one or two monitors, I've got just a plethora of displays. In this one, for example, it's showing me a live display of what's happening, but here's a cue list, and Hans has actually typed in for himself what these operations are, and it tells you the time. It could be just a single time, or it could be a separate time for up, down, could be all kinds of things. And then this is one possible display of controls, because these screens tend to be touch screens, and so if they are touch screens, they're almost like a duplicate of the board itself. And by the way, when you boot this board up, the first thing that it does is load Windows. So it really is a computer. And so I'm going to turn it off now, and in order to do that, I have to go through 5 or 6 different steps, because designers have cleverly made this software so that if you're going to do something that's going to erase a lot of hard work, you're going to have to confirm that you really, 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 really want to do that before it will do it for you. Daryl and I are going to be interacting behind me up at the main console, and I have to say that I apologize that you'll never actually see Daryl Strohan completely, because he's gone on vacation for 2 weeks, and I only realized that we only had his arms in the image that we recorded after it was too late. But thank you, Daryl. Here's the main console from this theater. This is the EOS. It's the same family. In fact, the family is named after this board. It's a very similar type of design to the smaller Ion console. And in this case, it's set up with, first of all, the two monitors that are built into it. And in this case, it has a third monitor that Daryl has put in, aside from the built-in ones. And he can assign a display, a specific display to any one of those. But it would appear that what's on this one here is something to do with the patch, the live display of what's happening on the stage, and then a more detailed version of that. And other than that, the layout of this is a bit like a combination of the fader wing idea on that side, the operating controls in the middle there, the keyboard that looks remarkably similar to the Ion keyboard, and then twice as many encoder wheels with their own screen, and two of the other kind of wheel, that's sort of equivalent to a touch pad or something like that. Functionally, this isn't a more powerful lighting console, but it is well set up to do what it does, because you have more functions accessible to you at all times without having to switch them. So the fact that you have two large encoders and four small ones is just so that you can differentiate them. The fact that you have two wheels allows you to do things without switching the function on the wheel. And like most pieces of computerized equipment that people are willing to let skilled people configure to suit their way of working, virtually everything you see here on the console can be modified to suit a particular way of working or particular set of functions or whatever, right? It's quite adaptable. And then it would appear that over there, just out of interest, I can show you that there appears to be a separate monitor. So let's take a look at that. This is a remote unit, and it has its own monitor. If you look at that, you're going to realize that it looks quite a bit like the other two, and indeed it is. It's running in parallel. Unless you're highly skilled and can enter directly into the command line, you're not going to try to operate things from this board. But it would be, for example, where a stage manager might be working, or the sound operator, because it is sitting here next to the main sound console. In certain circumstances, this would allow an operator to have information about what was happening on the cueing and lighting side of things. And in a complicated show, this can be quite useful. So Daryl is going to give you a general orientation to how this board is set up, from starting with conventional instruments and then an example, at least one, of more complicated instruments. Please go ahead, Daryl.
Okay, so the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to go into patch. And the way I do that is I'm just going to hit address/patch twice. That way it opens up my patch window and I'm good to go. On my console, I have it set up that I'm under patch channel. That's the way I prefer to patch. There are two other ways. There's patch channel and there's patch address. I prefer patch channel. So when I'm in patch channel, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to enter in my channel number. For this example, I'm going to use channel 4000. So I'm going to hit 4000. And in the case where I'm patching a conventional light, I'm going to hit at, which assigns the address, and then I'm going to enter in the dimmer number. In this case, it's going to be dimmer number 3. Hit in 3, I hit enter, and it patches it to channel 4000. The next instrument I'm going to patch in is a VLX wash. I'm going to patch that in on channel 4002. I'm going to start by entering my channel number, 4002. I'm going to hit at, and then I'm going to enter in the DMX address. In this case, the DMX address of the fixture is going to be on universe 2, so I'm going to hit 2 and then slash. That way the console knows which universe it's talking to. After I hit the slash, I'm going to enter in the DMX number of the fixture, in this case 400. Once I've done that, I'm going to hit type. This way the console knows what fixture it's talking to in terms of DMX parameters. This way it can know if it's talking about color, intensity, focus, or whichever.
So you do that by do you have to enter all that stuff, or you just like how do you enter, or what something that complicated is?
Great. So there's 3 ways of doing this. If you have patched in the fixtures before, it will show up in the show list here, and you can just click it.
Okay.
If you haven't patched already and you need to search it, there are 2 ways of doing it. You can search by manufacturer, which will list all fixtures from all manufacturers, and you can cycle through the list. Or you can search with the keyboard. So I'll search with the keyboard. So I'll go into search, and I'll hit my little keyboard icon, or if you have a keyboard, you can actually type. So in this case, I'm going to search up VLX wash. My fixture is a VLX wash mode 1, and I can see it right there. Once I find my fixture, I'm just going to double click it, and it's patched.
So how many addresses did it take?
So in this case, this fixture took 23 addresses. One way you can find out is if when you're in your type section and you search your fixture, when you find the mode you're in, right beside you'll see a number inside square brackets. That tells you how many DMX parameters the fixture will use in that current mode.
So what you mean, you can operate the same fixture in different ways, different modes?
Yes, depending on the manufacturer's description from the user manual, different fixtures can operate in different modes, and some can operate in modes where they do almost the exact same thing, but there's slight differences. So before you use any fixture, the best thing to do is find out which mode you need to run it in.
Is a mode the same as a personality?
The mode is not the same as a personality. A personality usually refers to the type of fixture, whereas the mode refers to how many DMX addresses and parameters it will use.
Huh? Wow.
So once I've patched in, I can go back to live by hitting the live button, and now I'm ready to start programming. So let's say I want to turn on channel 1, which is my conventional light. By default, the board will always assume that you are talking to channel 1 first, or your channel number first.
If you're in live mode.
Even in blind, it can do the same thing, but always in live, it will assume you're talking to the channel first.
Well, I guess we should explain that live mode, everything you do is visible on the stage, but blind mode allows you to do things and even record them without changing what's happening on stage.
That is correct.
Yeah.
So in live, whatever you do on stage or on the console will happen on stage. So now I'm going to turn on my channel 1 conventional light. To do that, I'm going to hit channel 1. By default, the board will always assume you're talking to the channel first. So in this case, I'm just going to hit 1. You can now see on my command line here, this is this box here, that it says channel 1. So the next thing I want to do is I want to enter in my intensity. To do that, I'm going to press the @ button here. You can then see on my command line that I see the little @ symbol, and my channel 1 tombstone has been selected. Now I can enter in an intensity. I can enter in an intensity number all the way from 01 through 99, but if I want the fixture to be at full, I have to hit the full button here, which I'm going to do. So I'm going to hit full, and then I have to hit enter, which is this button here, and the moment I hit enter, the light will turn on. And now my light is on.
What about if you're doing an instrument that is more complicated than that?
So let's say I'm going to turn on my VLX wash, which is a multi-parameter fixture. In this case, it's going to be channel 3001. So the first thing you will see on the console is the command line still has channel 1 at full on it. And then you see this little diamond-shaped symbol next to it. Whenever you see the diamond-shaped symbol, that means the command is executed, and the next thing I put in will automatically clear that and go from the assumption of the operator entering in the channel number.
Okay.
So in this case, my command has been executed, and I'm going to start with channel 3002 for my multi-parameter fixture. So I'm just going to start by typing in 3002. And you can see it's already selected channel, and then my channel number.
Okay.
I'm then going to hit @ to put in the intensity, and you can see it's selected it up here, as well as it shows down here.
Boy, that tombstone quote doesn't look at all the same as the other tombstone.
Yes, so because this is a multi-parameter fixture, in this view, it's showing all my parameters across the screen. Everything from intensity to focus and to color. So to enter in intensity, I've already hit my @ and I'm going to enter in my value. In this case, I'm going to hit 50 for 0.5%. I'm going to hit 50, and I'm going to hit enter. And now my fixture has turned on.
Okay.
So the next fixture I would like to turn on is a Source 4 Series 2 luster. In this case, it's a boom kit on stage right. So the channel for this one is going to be 1001. So because I've executed my last command correctly, by the sign of the diamond shape, I can just start by entering 1001. And then I'm going to hit @ for my intensity. And then in this case, I want to turn it up to 100%, so I'm going to hit full and enter. And my light has turned on.
And so in a show situation, and if you weren't designing from the board, then a lighting designer would be sitting out in the audience or in some location where they're seeing it, but preferably where the audience is seeing it from, and they'd be asking you to bring up all of these lights.
That is correct.
Yeah.
In that case scenario, the designer would actually be dictating what he or she wants me to press on the console.
Yeah. So you said this was a multi-parameter fixture, so I guess that means it can change color. In fact, I know it can change color. So how do you do that, like on the board? Show us what you might do.
So the Source 4 Series 2 luster is a color changing fixture. So if I wanted to change my color, the first thing I have to do is I have to select the channel. In this case, 1001. So I'm going to hit 1001. There are actually a few ways of changing the color on a multi-parameter fixture. The first way is by using the color picker tool of the console. So to do that, I'm going to select my channel, which I have done. I'm going to hit enter. That way, on the console, it knows that I'm going to be talking to 1001.
Right.
You can see it's selected my channel.
Right.
The next thing I want to do is go to my color picker. In this case, I haven't opened it, so I'm going to do so. To open it, I'm going to open up this little plus tab button. Now I'm going to pick up the screen I want. So these are all the screens that the console gives you in terms of programming, and it can range from anything from programming channels to effects and so on.
Okay.
In this case, I'm going to look up color, which is right here. I'm going to hit it, and now my color picker tab has opened.
Boy, that looks just like a laptop, doesn't it?
Pretty close. So if I want to make up my own color and just use this color picker here, because this console has touchscreens built in, I can just touch the color I want, and my fixture has changed to green. If I want it to be blue, I can just hit blue, and my console has changed to blue. Another way of selecting color is by using the gel book feature, which is also in the color picker window. So on the tab here, you see a bunch of little tabs all labeled 3, 4, 5, so on. In this case, I'm going to hit 5, which is the gel book for Roscoe Lux. So I want to hit 5. And all the Roscoe Lux gels have appeared on the right here. So I can scroll through this list and find the exact gel color I want to use, and I can hit that button. In this case, I'm going to use R94. I'm going to hit that, and my fixture has changed to that gel. Another way of changing color is back in Live. So I'm going to go to Live. I'm going to use the same channel, 1001. I'm going to hit 1001. And then I'm going to hit Add. In this case, I'm going to select a specific gel number from the Roscoe Lux series that I want to use. In this case, I want to use gel number R80. Because the console has a gel swatch book built into it, after I hit Add, I can hit the number of the swatch book, in this case, which is 5 for Roscoe. I can hit the slash symbol, and then I can hit the gel number, in this case, 80. And then I hit Enter. Once I hit Enter, the fixture will change to R80, and it's changed.
Well, I think that people who are just seeing this for the first time have no idea how incredible that is.
You can also see quickly that because I've switched my fixture to a gel, in the color section here of this table, you'll see that the color for all, or the attributes for all the color, say G and then R80. This refers to the fact that I'm actually pulling up a gel, and then it's actually telling me which gel color I've pulled up.
Yeah. Astonishing. Let's do something with the ones that can move.
The fixtures that can move are the VLX washes. In this case, channels 3001 and 3002. So I'm going to select 3001 and 3002. To select another channel at the same time, I'm just going to hit the plus symbol. On my command line, you can see the plus symbol added, and the next thing I can enter in is another channel number. In this case, 3002 for my other mover. And then I'm going to hit Act to turn them on. So I'm going to hit Act, full, enter. And now both of my VLX wash fixtures are turned on.
Okay.
These fixtures are multi-parameter fixtures that include a pan and tilt. That means I can physically, from the console, change the positioning of the beam and where it's pointing to on stage. So to do that, I'm going to go over to my encoder wheels. I'm going to use the tilt one, which is this one here. To do so, I'm just going to basically dial it one way, which tilts the fixture upstage. And the other way tilts it back down.
How did you know that was the tilt one?
On this console, there's a little touchscreen encoder display here. This way, whatever I'm using the fixture for, it will automatically tell me what these encoders are going to allow me to do. On this console, it's also that these two bottom encoder wheels are always default to pan and tilt. They have no other function than other pan and tilt of the fixture.
Okay.
So to pan the fixture, I'm going to use the other encoder wheel and turn it clockwise for going stage right and counterclockwise for going stage left. And that's how you can move moving head fixtures. You can also use the encoder wheels to do other functions of the moving head, i.e. color, zoom, strobe if you like. So let's say color. So to do so, there are 5 encoder buttons here. I'm going to hit color, which is this top one here. When I hit that, my encoder's display changes to show that I'm now in color mode, and it goes white, blue, green, and red. This way, now these encoders are going to directly talk to the color mixing attribute of the fixture. So let's say I want to turn the fixture full red. There are 2 ways of doing this. One, I can dial each one of these down to create red, as you can see on stage currently.
Yeah.
Or on the encoder display, I can use the max and the min functions. So let's say I want to make just white. To use the max and the min functions, because this is a touchscreen display, I can just hit max of white and min of all the others. So min of blue, min of green, and min of red. And now I have full white on stage. The VLX washes also have a zoom function. To use the zoom function, I have to enter into the form mode. So I hit form, and now my encoder display on here has changed. So I'm going to want to zoom the fixture fully out. Again, there are 2 ways of doing this. One, I can use the encoder wheel, or I can use the max and the min button. So to use the encoder wheel, again, you just rotate it, and your fixture has zoomed out. To use the max and the min button, because it is a touchscreen, you just hit min, and now my fixture is zoomed in all the way. You can also see on the display here that it shows me what degree the fixture is currently in. In this case, it is in a 23-degree mode, and if I zoom it out all the way, I'm going to hit max, it's now in a 60-degree mode. That way it can tell me at what degree the beam actually is.
So I guess these 2 ways of operating would be either the designer, if that's you or somebody sitting at a table, they would maybe know what they want or where they want to start, and they would just tell you to go there, or they want to see the effect as it changes, and they would just have you go slowly through the size and then say stop, back up, something else. So they have, and it's really actually also true for the color mode and so on, that if they had an idea that they wanted to duplicate a particular color from a particular manufacturer, you'd enter that in, and otherwise they might tell you to show me a red and then make it more orange, and off
Yes.
the color picker. Yeah,
That's correct.
yeah.
Another feature that this fixture has is the shutter strobe function. That feature is also in the form view. So I'm going to hit form, and I can see here it says shutter strobe. With this function, there are actually several different ways of doing this. So on the display right now it says open 00 shutter strobe. That tells me that my beam is open. If I wanted to put it into strobe mode, I can hit mode or expand. So if I hit mode, it will cycle through all the modes that that option gives me. So I'm going to go back to open, and I'll explain it in a second. The other option is to use expand. When I hit expand, the screen changes, and it gives me an option of all the modes the shutter strobe feature can offer. So I can go open, close, R&D for random, strobe, R&D open, pulse open, and pulse close. Each one is a slightly different strobe effect. So in this case, I'm going to do R&D. So I'm going to hit R&D, and you can automatically see that the fixture starts flashing. I can then speed it up or slow it down by using the associated encoder wheel. So in this case, it's going to be the third one down. I can turn that clockwise to speed it up, or I can turn it counterclockwise to slow it down. And that's how you can change the shutter control, the shutter strobe control of this fixture. So now if I want to have it back to just being on, I can just hit open, and it's back on. To exit out of the expanded mode, there's a button to the side that says collapse. Hit collapse, and you're back to your standard encoder display.
So I would guess that this kind of control is available for almost anything that any instrument that you pick can do. And I guess the short lesson there is this makes what is actually an incredibly detailed process accessible to you fast enough that you can actually make use of it in a designing situation. Yeah. And when I was talking before in these videos, I said that many of what's actually going on in all these kinds of functions is really made useful by the fact that these boards stopped pretending to be manual lighting boards, and just the designers acknowledged that they were computers to begin with and started putting things in the background and stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's incredible. Do we happen to have a cyc wash here in this show?
Yeah, so this current plot has 7 cyc lights hung behind the cyclorama.
And are they vivids?
They are vivids. The current fixtures are a mix between a vivid 63-inch and a vivid 21-inch.
Okay.
Which just basically refers to how many LEDs are in the fixture. So
when I showed the vivid in a previous lecture, but it had a lens on it. Do you have any idea of how many LEDs are actually in the smallest vivid, or ballpark?
In a single cell vivid, probably around 20 to 30. Rough. I honestly can't.
And are they really in 7 different colors?
Yes.
Yeah. So that's actually when I looked at it, I realized I wasn't sure, but yeah. So there are 7 different colors of LED mixing to whatever you want.
Yes, that's correct.
Wow, awesome. So let's see what a cyc wash looks like.
Okay. So on this show, my cyc channels are 301 through 307. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm just going to turn off all my other fixtures. And an easy way to do that is by pressing the go to queue out and then hit enter. And that way I'll just turn off all the lights and kind of reset the board to a blank look.
That was interesting. It did that in a timed fade to black.
Yes. By default, it's always a 5-second fade, but that is set up in the user configuration portion of the console.
Cool.
So to turn on my cyc lights, I'm going to select channels 301 through 307. So I'm going to start with channel 301. And because I'm selecting all the fixtures between 301 and 307, I'm going to hit the through button, which is right here. And then I'm going to hit the last fixture, which is 307. I'm going to hit At, and you can see that now all channels 301 through 307, all the channels in between have been selected. Now I can enter in my intensity. So for this example, I'm going to enter in full. I'm going to hit full and enter. And now my sight lights have turned on.
And is that the closest thing to white that it will do? Is that what we're looking at?
That is the closest thing to white according to the fixture. Again, depending on the fixture, the parameters, and the age of the fixture, the color white can vary.
Yeah.
So this is the closest thing to white, but it's more of an LED white.
Yeah, yeah. And I'm looking at the screen that's recording this, and I'm seeing that it's the stage camera is showing us something close to magenta, but my eyes are showing us something close to a slightly magenta-ish white. So just so you know, in the recording. Okay. And now what? Suppose you want to show us what these units will do in terms of color.
So these fixtures really only change color. That's the only feature of them. They can dim and they can change color. So again, there's a few ways of doing this. I can go into Color Picker, I can use the gel swatch book in Color Picker, or I can enter in the gel number specifically.
Okay.
So let's say I want a very vivid magenta.
Okay.
In this case, I'm going to use R349. So with my channel still selected.
And I should point out that the reason you can say that is because you actually work as a designer, and you have a pretty good sense of what R349 is going to look like, and you think that's what you're going to start with.
Yes.
It's not random at all. You're actually, by saying 349 as opposed to another number, you're starting with a very deliberate choice based on experience. Yeah.
Yes, that's correct.
Yeah.
So with my channel selected, I can hit At. In this case, it's going to be R349. So I'm going to hit 5 / that's saying to the console I'm going to look at gel swatch book number 5, which is Roscolex. And then I'm going to hit in my gel number, 349. I'm going to hit enter, and it changes it immediately.
Yep. And again, on at least the monitor I'm looking at, this is more varied than it actually looks to my eyes. So it's a pretty decent color, a little bit varied intensity, but not nearly as dramatically as it looks on the camera.
Another function of the Vivids is you can run color effects on it. Again, because it's a color changing fixture, you can actually run an effect on the channel in the console, which is basically telling what color the fixture should get. So to do so, I'm going to open up my effects view. This is just so I can figure out what effect I would like to put on. So to do so, I'm going to hit the little plus symbol in the bottom of my screen, and then I can select which view I want. In this case, effects. So I'm going to hit effect, then my effects list pops up. This list is where you can create all of your effects. By default, the console has a number of effects built into it, all listed in the 900 range. So in this case, because it's a color changing fixture, I'm going to look at my list for color changing effects. In this case, effect 901 through 913. Effect 913 is bump color. I'm going to give that one a try. So I know which effect I want. Now I can go back to live by hitting live, and I can apply the effect. To do so, I need to select my channels. So I'm going to select 301 through 307. The next thing I need to do is I need to apply the effect. To do so, I'm going to hit Effect, which is this button here. I'm going to hit Effect, then I'm going to enter in the effect number, 912, I think it was. I'm going to hit Enter. And you can see that on the console, certain things have changed, as well as on stage, but I still get the quite magenta look. This is because the effect is only applied to certain parameters of the fixture. in this case, red, green, and blue, whereas the fixture has red, red-orange, amber, green, blue, indigo, and cyan. So if I want to see the effect more, I basically need to take those attributes out. To do so, I'm going to go to the encoder display, I'm going to hit color, and I'm basically going to turn off red-orange by hitting min, amber by hitting min, and I need to turn off indigo and cyan. To do that, I need to hit color again. This cycles through the color pages of that fixture. So I can see cyan, I'm going to hit min, I'm going to indigo, min, and now I have my color effect somewhat going. It is a very dim effect, and if I want to make it more pronounced, I can go in and modify the effect. To do so, I hit effect twice. Okay.
Yep.
I'm going to select my effect, in this case 912. I'm going to hit 912, enter. Sometimes the console will automatically appear here with effect attributes. In this case it hasn't, so I'm going to hit this little triangle tab here. This opens up my effect editor. In this case, I just want to boost the scale, which makes the color go from 25% to 100%. To do so, I'm going to hit scale, I'm going to type in 100, and hit enter. And now my color bump has changed. I can also speed up the effect by going through cycle time, and I can change it to 1 for a fast effect, or I can change it to 10 for a slower effect.
So, and these kinds of effects, of which there are many, are pre-programmed in the console?
Yes.
Yeah.
Once I've finished my effect, I can go back to live, and I can continue programming.
So, this is a pretty amazing set of capabilities, but how do you record cues for a show? Like when you want to actually build lighting looks on stage.
So record cues comes down to two sections. First, doing the general programming in terms of turning on your channels, turning on your multi-parameter fixtures if you so wish, choosing the color, choosing where the lights focus, if it's a multi-parameter fixture, and so on. Once you've set all that, the second part of actually recording the cue comes in, which are separate functions on the console and have separate displays.
So why don't you just go ahead and build a cue?
Yeah, I was thinking maybe, yeah, okay. So I'm going to start by building my first cue. Let's say I want to have something a little more isolated downstage with the cyclone. So I'm going to start, in my case, I'm going to start with the cyc. So I'm going to select my cyc channels, 301 through 307. I'm going to hit at full, just to start with. My cyc lights have turned on. For this cue, I would like my cyc to be in a deep blue. So I'm going to do R80. So I'm going to hit at 5/ for gel swatchbook number 5 or Roscoe. And I'm going to hit 80. This way I'm hitting gel 80. So, me looking at the cyc, I don't really like how that's not deep blue. So I'm going to I'm going to go to my color encoder, and I'm going to just make sure everything except for blue is turned down. So green min, amber min, red orange min. Cyan is up, so I'm going to turn that down. My indigo is up, and my blue is up.
Now that
I like that.
Yeah, that is much closer to R80 as I know it than the program.
Yeah. So now with my cyc the way I want it, let's say I want to bring the intensity down. To do so, I'm just going to hit at, and then I'm going to pick the intensity that I want. In this case, I want it at 80%. So I'm going to hit 80 and enter. You can see it kind of dims.
I suppose I wasn't sure that I wanted 80. Can you do something you can take it up and down while I'm watching it?
Yeah. So if you're unsure of what intensity you would prefer to set your channel at, you can use this encoder wheel here, and you can just scroll it up to brighten or down to lower. So in this case, if I want to go make it dimmer, I can just use this and bring it down, and as I scroll, you can see it gets dimmer. Let's say I want to make it a little bit brighter than that, and it's going brighter. So right now, this is at 60%, and I'm actually fine with that, so I'll leave that as is. The next thing I would like to do, so I'd just like to highlight something on stage. So to do so, I'm actually going to use one of my moving head fixtures. In this case, I'm going to use channel 3002. I'm going to select 3002. I'm just going to bring it up at full to start. And now I'm ready to actually start positioning it and changing the color. So in this case, I want to highlight one of the chairs on stage. To do so, I'm going to go to my encoder wheel. I'm going to pan the fix, or I'm going to tilt the fixture, sorry, just upstage first, and then I'm going to pan the fixture on stage. Wrong way. And I want to hit that beginning chair. So now I've focused my moving head there. Let's say I want to make it kind of a warm, kind of orangey amber color. I don't know the specific gel number in this case, so I'm going to use the color picker. So because my channel is still selected, I can go right to color picker, and I can find the color I would prefer. So I'm going to hit here, and I find that a little too orange, so I'm going to just select slightly more green, and I don't mind that.
And you can't you move the crosshairs around with encoder wheels and things like that too, or is that just a different board that does that?
That would be a different board.
Okay.
This will change with your encoder wheels, but there is no specific encoder wheel that is only your X or your Y axis. You do have the option of using it here, but there is specifically no encoder wheel meant for that.
Okay.
As you can see, if I go to my encoder display, if I dial up green, you will see it move, but it's just both as it's dialing up more green.
Okay. Yep.
So I like that right there.
Okay.
And then, to get out of this display, I can either hit live, or I can just hit the tab for number 1 live table patched.
Okay.
So let's say I want to add some booms for some side fill.
Okay.
In this case, I'm going to add the shims on the boom, which are the lowest fixture. So that's going to be channels 71 through 81. And I'm going to hit them at, let's say full for now. Full. And they turn on in open light. Let's say I want to make it a nice kind of red. Because I know the gel color, I'm going to hit add again. This way it selects the last channels in my command line, and I'm good to start entering my channel number. In this case, I'm going to use R25. So I'm going to hit 5/25 and enter. And I can see on those fixtures, it's more of a burnt orange than a red. So I'm just going to take my encoder wheels, and I'm just going to dial down the yellow, dial up the yellow, dial down the cyan, yeah, should be going, yeah, there we go, dial down, take out the green, and dial up the magenta. And I'm happy with that kind of red.
All right.
So let's say that's it for how I want this cue to look.
Okay. So how do you store it?
To store the cue, you have to record the cue into your cue list. To do so, you have to press the record button here. I'm going to hit record. And I now need to enter in a cue number. So in this case, it's going to be my first cue, which is number 1. So I'm going to hit 1. I'm going to hit enter. You can now see that everything in my channel list has changed from red to being blue. You can see my cue number 1 here. The timing of the cue has been here. And on another screen, if you have it, on this screen here, it has now appeared in my cue list.
And some of those things went to default, so like the time, for example.
Yes, that is correct. By default, again, this can be set up in the settings portion of the console. By default, the timing of the cue is always 5. To change the cue time, you'd hit the time button, sorry. So I've already made a second cue on this board. When you're running cues, you'd use the playback function of the console, which is this portion of the console here. I have my faders here, I have my stop and back button, and I have my go button. The go button goes to the next cue. The stop and the back button have 2 functions. If you're currently running a cue, as in the timing and you're transitioning from one cue to the next, if you hit the stop button, it will stop that cue from transitioning further. If you're in the queue already and you hit the stop back button, it will go back to the previous queue. And these faders are for timing. In most cases, they're always up as the timings are preset on the console. So as I'm in Q1, if I would like to go to my next queue in time of 5 seconds, I can just hit go, and it transitions from one queue to the next on stage. You can also see in the queue list that number 2 is full yellow. That means my queue is complete. So if I hit my back button, it will go back to number 1. And you could briefly see that the number 1 was red. This means that the queue is currently transitioning from one queue to the next. So if I hit go again into Q2, and I hit stop, Q2 has remained red, but is not transitioning any further, and still has 3.9 seconds of duration left. I can also see that it says stop here. I can then hit go again to finish the transition of the queue.
And with the sliders, can you slow it down and speed it up manually?
By default, no. What the slider does if you bring it down is it overrides the timing of the cue, and then as you bring it up slowly or fast, whichever you like, it would then allow that cue to come up with that appropriate timing, and I'll show you in a second. So I'm back in Q1, and I'm going to bring these faders down, which cancel out the timing, and I'm going to hit go. As you can see, my duration says man for manual, and it's in red, but nothing's happening. Not until I start going up slowly, you can kind of see stuff change. And it's slightly changed. Again, some parameters such as color and movement can have different effects than intensity when you're using the manual times. I'm now going to record a cue with a live person on stage. So in this cue, I really want to highlight that person. So I started by just going to a blank look on stage, by going to go to cue out, and that way it just turns everything off. So the first thing I want to do is I'm going to use my VLX washes. So I'm going to select channel 3001 and 3002. I'm just going to turn them on at full. Now they're on. So now I got to individually focus each light. So I'm going to hit 3001, enter, select it, and I'm going to use my pan and tilt to focus on my person on stage. Okay, now I'm going to take my other one. I'm going to do the same thing. Now, once focused, I can start programming the rest of my cube. So to do so, I'm going to make this a very, probably dramatic look. So I'm going to start, in my case, I'm going to start with actually taking the fixtures out. So I'm selecting 3001 through 3002. I'm just going to hit out. The out button turns the fixture off, and my fixtures are out. So because I want this to be a very dramatic cube, I'm actually going to start with one of my boom lights. So I'm going to select channel 1005. I'm going to bring it up to 50%. On. I can see it's a little dim, so I'm actually going to bump it up maybe to 70. I'm going to hit at 70, enter. Looks a little dim to me, so I'm going to hit another 10%. I'm going to at 80, enter. That looks pretty good for dramatic lighting so far. So now I can set my color. In this case, I'm going to use a deep blue. So I'm going to try an R80. I'm going to do at 5/80, enter. And that's pretty good on him. Now I want to fill him in a little bit on the other side. So I'm going to select channel 1001. I'm going to bring that one up at full, enter. And I'm going to select a different color, maybe an R90, which is a green. I like that. Now, I'm going to add in those VLX washes that I brought in. So I'm going to do channel 3001. I'm going to bring that up at, I don't know, maybe 40%. And I'm going to select that at a 5/17. And I think that's a little too bright, so I'm going to bring it down to maybe 30. Nice little glow. I'm going to select my other one, channel 3002. I'm going to bring that one up to full to start. And I'm going to select a nice deep magenta one. So I'm going to do it at 349 again. 5/349. Enter. You can see it's a little bright. I'm going to use my encoder wheel. I'm just going to bring it down until I find a nice intensity. I like it a bit better. How does that read on screen for you?
It's actually better than some of the others. It actually looks quite a bit like it does.
Okay, cool. I'm then going to see if one of my top lights can maybe add in a bit of definition to it. So I'm going to turn on channel 202, which is a source 4 par, kind of right above it. I'm going to bring that up at maybe 40%. It's slightly downstage, so I'm going to add on the next step. 205. Bring that up at 40 again. And I actually don't like that, so I'm going to take 202 plus 205 out. And I think I'm just going to record that cue. So I'm going to hit record. My next cue is 3. I'm going to hit 3. I'm going to hit enter. Now my cue is recording. But it has a time of 5, and I want to change that to maybe a time of 1. To do so, because I've just recorded the cue, I can hit time, and then I can hit in my time. Let's say 1. You see on my command line it says Q3 time 1, enter. You can see my time has changed. So now, if I go back to my second cue that I've previously recorded, and I hit go, it takes 1 second to change from one to the next.
Now, what if Dylan moved physically on stage? Could you follow him?
I can. So let's say I want to take a few steps downstage and I want to follow him with it. Dylan, can you step downstage for me? And stop. Perfect, thank you. So let's say my next cue I want to follow him, but he's at a light, so I need to refocus it. So in this case, I'm going to take my movers because I want to keep it in the same style. I'm just going to refocus it on him. 3001, enter. In this case, I'm just going to pan. Going to find him. I can find him there. And from my view, I need to tilt it down slightly. There we go. I'm going to do the same with the other. 3002. I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to panic to find him. And I'm going to tilt down slightly. I find that good. And now I can either record that or I can modify the other fixtures. So let's say I want to take the fixtures behind him out. I'm going to select 1001 plus 1005. I'm going to hit out. And they're out. Let's say I want to turn on maybe something else, see if that'll work. So I'll turn on a shim. So I'm going to hit 71. I'm going to hit at full, enter. You can see he's kind of in it, but it's a very deep magenta. I'm going to change that to being a rich red. So in this case, I'm actually going to use my encoder wheels. So I'm on color. I'm going to dial magenta all the way up. I'm going to see yellow all the way up. And I'm going to dial cyan, make sure green are all the way down. And I'm happy with that. Now I can record it as my next cue, but I want it to have a time of 0. So I can do that all in one go. So I can hit record. My next cue is going to be number 4. So I'm going to hit 4. And because I know the time I want, I can actually now hit time, 0, enter. Now I've recorded my cue, as I can see in my cue list, and I've already changed the time all in one go. So now I can ask Dylan to step back. Dylan, do you mind stepping back? Great, thank you. And when I yell go, he's going to step forward up to where he was. So when I yell go, Dylan, can you go to where you just were? Great. And go. So now, between those two cues, those lights have followed him.
So that's the basics of recording and playback. Anything else you think we should we should actually demo?
I think there's one command line we should tell them.
Okay.
One important thing to know is the go to cue button. The go to cue button is a button that allows you to go from one cue to the next out of sequence, and it can actually allow you to kind of reset the look on stage. So in this case, I'm in cue 4 currently, and I would like to go to cue 1. I can press stop and back multiple times, or I can just hit go to cue, enter in my cue number, in this case 1, and hit enter. It will take the default go to cue time, which is 5, and it'll take 5 seconds and transition to that cue on stage. Another function of go to cue is if you combine it with the out button, and what that will allow is that it will take all the intensities and all the parameters of the current cue and take them out. So in this case, go to cue, out, enter, basically clears any active cue and any selected channel on the stage. Now, everything's off, and I'm in complete darkness.
And that's what you would do before you shut everything down?
Yes. Yeah.
All right. Well, that's fantastic. I think anything more than that, people should watch the ETC Connect training videos.
Probably.
Thank you, Dylan, and thank you especially, Daryl.